Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Onos and today I'm going to take you through my first impressions of Hellpoint. This is my first review in progress video to show off some early hands-on gameplay and talk to you about my initial thoughts on the game. First of all, a quick thank you to TinyBuild and to Cradle Games Studio for the early access. This is the first early access we've had here on the channel and it makes a huge difference to getting information out to you guys. If you enjoy the video, please leave me a like and comment, it makes a huge difference to the channel growth. Bear in mind that at the time of making this video I am working within the limits of the embargo. I have been asked not to give away any spoilers or too much detail. That said, when I am allowed to tell you more, I will be covering the game in a lot more detail. With that in mind, any footage you're seeing is from the very early game. Also bear in mind that whilst I have been given early access, I am not being employed or paid to cover this game, so I will be completely honest with you about my thoughts. So, first of all, I'll give you the official script on the game and then I'll tell you my feelings from the first hours I've spent in the game already. Hellpoint takes place on Irid Novo, a derelict space colony orbiting in real time around an ominous black hole. All inhabitants appear to have suffered from a terrible affliction called the Merge. You play as a Spawn, a soulless, mechanically printed slave forced to take part in a strange scientific experiment that hides many dark secrets. The game releases on the 30th of July for Xbox One, PS4 and PC. The launch for Nintendo Switch has unfortunately been delayed until later in 2020. Okay, so that's the backdrop for the game. Now let's break down a few things. First of all, yes, it's definitely a Souls-like. I talk about how games feel quite a lot, and I'll definitely be doing that here as I think it's important. You'll see why. To me, this game feels very much like a Souls game, more so than any other Souls-like I've played recently, to be honest. People have, in the past, said that a lot of games are Souls-like. These days, it seems that any game that plays in the third person, with half-decent character progression, builds and weapons, will be called Souls-like at some point or another. The phrase is thrown around far too much for my liking. I've heard Nioh talked about with that same description, and to me, Nioh is nothing like Dark Souls at all, aside from the fact that it's a third-person character progression, and the doors never open from this side. With Hellpoint, I am comfortable saying that this is a Souls-like, and by that I mean the way the game feels. It feels dark, foreboding, the story and lore aren't spelled out for you before you even start the game. It's shrouded in mystery, and you find snippets of information as you make progress, both in terms of the backstory and in terms of your own potential character development. Also, it has the potential to easily scare you and make you jump out of your skin on occasion, much like Dark Souls was able to do on your first playthrough. Playing Hellpoint gives you that same excited, nervous feeling when you play, that slight concern about what's around the next corner, the same worry about straying too far from the last save point, when you have collected a lot of materials and you're not sure where the next place is that you can rest and level up. Saying that Hellpoint is Souls-like and very close to the same feeling is not an insult or an attempt at saying anything has been ripped off. To the contrary, some of the systems in Hellpoint are ingenious and very original. The level design is intricate with a lot of verticality. There are hidden areas all over the place which you can reach by changing your thinking. Don't think about left, right, back and forward. You also need to think about up and down. This adds an incredible amount of depth to the game from what I've seen so far. Added to that is the real-time element, which is something I really love about the game. The station is orbiting a black hole in real time, and its orbit has a direct impact on the gameplay. At certain points in the cycle, which you can see up in the top left of the screen. The enemies you face will change, or there might be a mini-boss waiting for you that wasn't there before. Again, this all adds to the initial feeling of uncertainty when you play. You might be wandering around an area you've already cleared and suddenly the place is swarming with enemies again, just when you thought you were safe. There may even be certain doors open to new areas that were closed only moments before. The combat is tough, some enemies are really hard to put down, especially early on. You'll need to work out their movements and patterns before you can attempt to get your hits in without taking too much damage or dying outright. There are of course bosses, but I won't be showing any of those off today. Soon though. If you die, then you drop your materials and you have the opportunity to go and pick them up, as you might expect with a game of this type, but Hellpoint has an additional challenge waiting for you. When you go to pick up your materials, not only will you have to face the enemies you fought before, or potentially even more, depending on the orbital cycle, but there may also be your own revenant or ghost wandering around. This will also try to take you down, and take it from me, they can add a whole new complication to getting your stuff back. If you manage to kill them, then you'll get a little bonus, but this is just another example of where Hellpoint have taken things a small step further. There is a levelling system which allows for a relatively complex set of stats for you to place points into. There are definitely a lot of potential character builds in this game. The combat allows for both melee and ranged builds, with a lot of variation on the flavour you prefer. There are loads of weapons in the game that I've seen so far, each with their own moveset, strengths and weaknesses. Some of the arm sets look seriously cool too. Some weapons you can pick up from exploration, others you will be able to farm for. There is also a crafting system, but I'll get more into that after the embargo is lifted. Weapons have an element of flexibility too. Upgrades for weapons can be transferred from one weapon to another using special chips called a conductor. This means you can switch between weapons easily and have them viable at whatever level you've managed to reach. However, the more you inflict damage using a particular weapon, the more this weapon will unlock special abilities unique to its kind, like piercing attacks, backstabbing, weapon throws, and sometimes even stranger powers. This means that if you stick with a weapon, your time invested will pay off. There is co-op available in the game, both online and available to play with a friend if you want to go split screen. I also believe there will be PvP, which is optional, although I've had no experience with that yet, so I can't comment. I don't want to say too much more on the details at this stage, but I do plan to do a proper review when the embargo is lifted. I do have some critiques of the game and I'll get into that when I do the review, but what I will say now is, none of the critiques I have are a deal breaker. Nothing I have to say will change whether you enjoy the game or not. I haven't seen any major red flags or issues. In fact, the things I mention when I do critique the game in future may actually make the game better in your eyes. For example, the graphics and interface design of Hellpoint aren't as polished as something like Neo, but this could easily be considered deliberate to fit in with the style of the game. It's worth mentioning for those of you who consider graphical quality to be vitally important to your enjoyment of a game, but I personally don't feel that it takes anything away from the gameplay, which is solid and very, very enjoyable. I feel confident in saying that if you enjoy Dark Souls and you're not too hung up on the fact that Hellpoint has a sci-fi setting, then my belief is you will love Hellpoint. I really wouldn't let that put you off, even if it's not your favourite genre. I'm really looking forward to spending more time in the game myself. I've loved it so far and I definitely plan to cover the game in a lot more depth here on the channel. I hope you found this useful. I'm sure you have questions, but please understand I may not be able to answer them yet depending on the embargo, so please forgive me if I'm unable to answer something right now. Leave me a like and comment if you don't mind, sub if you're new, and I'll wrap it up here with a promise of more to come. Thank you for watching, see you for the next one, take care, stay safe, bye bye now.